for today's tutorial we're going to make a real nasty looking modern contemporary hardcore style logo. Think along the gritty lines of Creepy Death or the Guild Trip logos, with a bit of the savage chroming of the Cold Steel or even the Out of Pocket logo. Stay tuned and we'll bang it out. Yo, what's the crack? My name is Huion. Welcome to Spearhead, the metal art channel where we dive into the darker side of graphic design and illustration. This logo is going to be for DJ Champagne, one of the best lads in the country making pumping techno. Shout out to G-Town Records. So Coley has a larger than life personality. So I want to try put a little bit of that energy and kind of fun into the logo itself. So I'm not going to bore you any longer, we're just going to go straight into this now and I'll see you in Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and as always we're going to get started with an A3 artboard that's 4961 by 3508 pixels at 300 dpi, just to have it nice and big. Go big or go home. I'm going to start by writing the name of the logo out in a free font called Iron Horse that you can get anywhere. I'm Irish, so in Ireland that's called Iron Horse. Now that we've got our base down, I'm going to drop the opacity to about 50% just so I can use this as a guide. I'm going to make a new layer, I'm going to take my lasso tool and I'm just going to start drawing over the top of it. While I draw, I'm taking care to kind of like take some notches out, but also to really accentuate some of the spiky serifs that we have going on in this font. The font itself is kind of boring, but like with a few little kind of pushes along the way, we can really get it looking nice. And you can use it as a nice base with some, warping and some liquefying stuff, maybe some arching, get a nice bit of flow going in this. So as you can see, I'm going over very loosely and very roughly, and what I'm trying to do is I'm like really trying to bring out the spikes in the bottom and the top more so than the ones on the sides, because as these letters are quite close together, we're gonna need to try sort of like stitch them and knit them in together. But it's fine if you find like some of them are tucking below and some of them are tucking above and you don't like the way they are, you can always just use your lasso tool, chop bits out and delete them as you go, and refill them in then again with a better shape as you see fit. Like, let's face it, this is Photoshop. Control Alt Z and you're sorted, you know what I mean? Any mistakes we make here, it's kind of like all part of it, and you can just really build upon those. So then once I was happy with the shapes of the letters that I built up here and drawn, you can get rid of your font layer now, you won't need it anymore. Then I've just made a selection of my layer by pressing Control and clicking on the thumbnail of the layer, and then I've gone into Refine Edge and I'm just kind of smoothing them out a bit, bringing them in a little bit, not really going mad. So what I've done is I've gone into Bevel and Emboss here. I have it on a nice smooth bevel. The size is quite low and the softness is down completely at 0. Then once I was happy with my bevel, I went into Gradient Overlay, and I've just gone in and made like a grey into black gradient here, but I've made sure it was reflected. Just make sure you have that checked, because then you'll have like the nice like grey in the center and it'll get darker towards the edges. After that I thought it looked pretty damn cool, so I just went into stroke and I put a center stroke on it of about 8. I always like working in the Fibonacci sequence. If you watched a few of my videos you might have noticed that by now. I always do things in like 3s, 5s, 8, 13, 21, 34, it'll always look balanced that way, and I guess I've gotten into the habit and I like it quite a lot. So then I basically just duplicated that layer and rasterized it and went into brightness and contrast, and I just nudged my contrast up a bit so the black edges are very black and the white highlights on the bevel are very white, if you get me. Now that I was happy with my letters, what I've done is I've gone in and I've started to chop them out of the main layer that they're on, and I'm just kind of tilting things, twisting them around, trying to like overlap them and stuff. I don't really know what I was thinking at this stage. I think I was like trying to give it like a really punk style flow, all the letters are kind of thrown higgledy-piggledy and nothing really like makes sense where it is, but when it's all sandwiched together it'll look cool in the end up. But yeah, in the end I ended up actually kind of balancing them all out again, all the letters, because I thought it was a little bit too hectic. And to be honest, I just wanted a little bit of movement, to give it kind of a playful kind of feeling to the letters themselves. I then started trying to work in a little bit of hierarchy with the S and the N, try to accentuate some of our spikes using warp and then a few liquefy passes and stuff, just to kind of get a feeling for like how I want it to look. Then I just made a group of all of my letters, and once I was happy with where I had placed them, duplicated that group, started like pushing my letters around and stuff and warping and using perspective and skew to kind of make the hierarchy of the S and the N a little bit more apparent. This is all by eye. You don't really need to like pay much attention to your real design fundamentals here. Again, this is a punk hardcore logo, so as long as it kind of looks good and balanced to you and the client likes it, then you're kind of onto a winner here. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just kind of like playing with my guidelines here and stuff, making sure that my S and my N are the same height as each other and that the rest of the letters sort of fall in quite nicely with those. So once I was happy with the S and the N kind of framing the logo, then all I did was play around a little bit more, nudging things here and there. I merged them all onto one layer, and then I started playing with my perspective. I was putting some arcing on it of about 5. After that, I'm just playing a little bit with liquify, just trying to like bring out some of the spikes again, as I was saying, at the front and the back. I think that's such a classic like hardcore kind of shape, isn't it? You know, the really big arcing. It looks really nice in the back of like a t-shirt, or like above like a nice illustration on the front of an album cover. It's tried and tested. It's part of the visual language of the genre, so like you don't really need to deviate too far from it. Like if you want to just stick with that, you're kind of going to be onto a winner. Like it's tried and tested. Here you can see I'm just taking my brush and giving it a liquify pass still, kind of nudging some of the spikes inwards, again trying to play off more of the arcing. And once I was happy with that, I went back into my warp, put like a minus lower arc on it. I then extended the vertical height of the full layer itself. When you put that lower arc onto a bunch of letters, it'll like really pinch the central ones, so they'll be like way too short. Press Ctrl and T and then drag down and extend the vertical height of it until your middle layers are pretty much the same height that they were. Then the 2 framing letters at the start will be nice and big, and they'll be like locking the whole kind of logo in. After that, I just gave it like another slight arc of about 5. Finally, I went in just for like one more liquify pass, just to kind of balance things out a little bit. The overall shape is quite tight, but we've also got our letters sort of jumbled up a bit. You know, things are like tilting into each other and kind of overlapping here and there, and that's kind of what I was going for with this logo. I wanted it to look like really kind of messy, but also be quite balanced and hard and full in its form. Here I was kind of playing with the idea of mirroring the S and the N, but I opted to kind of just like drop that idea. It would have been like too messy at this point of the logo. It might have been cool looking, but it would have been way easier to do when these were just flat black and I hadn't already put the effects and stuff and already like mashed things around and used like our warp and our liquify and all. I was like well past the point of no return at this stage. So always keep that in mind. Like when you're working as like frantically and as messy as me, you will get to a stage where you have to commit to what you've done, or you'll have to start all over again. Sometimes that's fine, but sometimes you might just want to like just power through and persevere with it. 9 out of 10 times when you do persevere, you'll get something savage at the end anyway. Now that I was happy with my overall logo, the legibility is there, the chromey kind of stuff is there, the flow and the bounciness is there, and the nastiness is there. So I thought I'd throw a little cherry on top by drawing out a really hard, vicious looking spiky stroke. And I think I've pressure sensitivity on my drawing tablet here. And what I'm doing is I'm very carefully like drawing around the letter forms themselves. I'm trying to stay pretty much the same distance from the edge of all the letters as I go. But again, you can see I'm bringing in a little bit of bounciness and a little bit of movement just to give it that kind of really evil and spiky sort of feeling. And after you've put down that layer, you know, it's the same as any other layer. You can warp and you can push and you can nudge things and get it looking mean. When I was happy with the shape of that, I just used my magic wand tool and made a selection of the inside of the stroke here, and I filled it with white. Then I duplicated that layer, and with the layer below, I just kind of nudged it down about 30-40 pixels to give it like an extra little bit of depth and 3D sort of feeling. You know, that this is like a nice stamp that someone's like whacked or slapped onto something. Again, going to me old faithful, just going into liquify and just kind of like pushing things and pulling things to make sure that it's all nicely kind of like lined up and sandwiched together. All the while, I'm kind of nip-tucking things, I'm using my eraser and taking bits out, I'm adding extra bits in with my my brush and my lasso tools and stuff, you know. Then I made another selection and I selected all the white of our layer. I duplicated that, and then I went into my layer styles, and again I went into bevel and emboss, and I brought it down to a nice soft chiseled kind of edge, but I made the direction going down. Also kind of tried to bring it like fairly close to 90 degrees, so the light will be coming from directly the top of the logo, just to make sure it's got that extra 3D kind of feeling. And not to toot my own horn here, but I thought that was a pretty nice idea and it was looking deadly. After that, I just got my spearhead grit texture, which is down in the assets folder in the description, which you can grab for free and use in all your designs going forward. And I'm kind of like laying it over and just kind of like gritting it up. Once I was happy with like the kind of dirt on it, basically all I did was make a selection of my lower stroke layer and I inverted that selection, then deleted all of the outside grid. After this, I duplicated my texture again and I inverted it, and I just start throwing bits of white kind of texture to make it look extra damaged, to give it that sort of like photocopy feel. You know, the old punk kind of vibe stuff where like things haven't printed out well and they kind of like scratched off or like been balled up in your school bag, and you know, like bits of the photocopy is like falling apart. That's the kind of vibe I love in logos, and that's kind of like what I've been going for the last couple of years. And it served me fairly well, I have to tell you. I merged all of these onto one layer and I kind of reduced the vertical height of it there again. Then I went in to liquefy again and fixed another spike that was just kind of like irritating me a little bit. And once I was happy with that, I just went straight in and used the old faithful, the Xerox style filter gallery trick. And if you would like to learn how to do that in much more detail, it's up there in the top right hand corner of the video. Click on that and you'll never look back. You use it for all your designs. And with that, boom, we're done. So done and dusted. What you think? Wasn't too tricky an old process, was it? Like, it's nice and straightforward. Just use your noodle and you'll be able to figure out something deadly. You'll take this and build off it and make your own logo, and you'll be flying in no time. If you enjoyed that, please consider giving me a little like and subscribe. I've left a few goodies for you down in the assets folder in the description. Please grab them and use them in all your artwork. And if you make a logo from this tutorial, please send it to me over on Instagram. I'd love to get a look at stuff that you do. It's so sick. But anyway, I hope this was both entertaining and enlightening, and I hope you're all having a good old week. So as always, I love yous and leave yous, and take care. I'll see yous in the next one.